Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining this meeting, which aims to restart or continue the conversation that we had over the spring and summer last year around the possibility of a European citizen initiative. We left the group with the need of a thorough revision of the original text that was shared, and then some of us had many kind of busy times, but in the meantime, we were able to work on the major part of the feedback that was provided in the preliminary meetings that we had with this same group, plus some addiction. And in the convocation of this email, you have seen that a lot of works had been done to try and recraft the text for the European Citizen Initiative. And also we had some feedback from the legal team of the department of the European Commission that works on European citizen initiatives, technically the forum for organizers of this type of instrument, that provided some additional feedback on the challenging work that we have had. The purpose of this meeting, and I'm just gonna share it, but I leave the floor mainly to Marco and Magdalena, is to present that work that was done on the text, to have a discussion with this group on the latest in the different member states, and a sense of urgency that is growing for really trying and launch a coordinating action at the European level. Only as a little but important premise that I want to make is that as Eumans movement for citizens engagement on democracy and civil rights, our goal, we already discussed it in the previous meetings, was to try and coordinate this effort for the European Citizen Initiative, but also we did quite a lot of work to prepare as better as possible the next 15 months that we are gonna live as European citizens, knowing that 2024 will be the year of the next European elections, as well as the renewal of the European Commission. And in terms of window of opportunity, as the political scientists call it, probably this political moment can be a good moment to launch the idea of a European reform of drug policies, in particularly in relation with cannabis, alongside other topics that somehow pertains to the self-determination rights of citizens. So I'm going to share in the chat in a bit a link that shows that the type of work that we are trying to do, so to connect multiple and synchronize multiple European citizen initiatives to be launched more or less in the same time frame, to become a point of political pressure on the political parties that are going to compete at the European elections. Topics goes from the innovation and strengthening of democracy to other social and civil rights, going from abortion, end-of-life decisions, the migration emergency in the Mediterranean and the borders of Europe. So to somehow use this opportunity to show a vision of Europe that it's important to be taken into account by those that aims to lead in the next future. So I wanted to give this context because beside the specificity of the cannabis legalization, the criminalization matter, I believe that the strength of a joint effort of multiple European Citizen Initiatives Committee can be something that strengthens each one of those, and the difficulty that is inherent in the instrument of the European Citizen Initiative, which is to inform the citizens about their right to sign, and the lack of impact if you look at just simply as a purely bureaucratic process, the weakness of the European Citizen Initiative, but it's the strength that comes with it when it's a proper wave across the European Union. in 3 weeks, we are already organizing a summit in Gdansk, Poland, that has the goal of connecting activists from these intersectional struggles in the same place to try to consolidate also a shared strategy for this type of activities, less relevant for this meeting tonight, but I think it's important as an element of context for what we're trying to discuss today. So as I said, I'm just going to share a little bit the meeting. I want to leave the floor, first of all, to Marco Perduca. I would skip the round of introductions because more or less we all know each other, but maybe when you speak, you introduce yourself. We just do a bit of a reminder. And maybe Marco can explain the work that had been done so far on the text, and also maybe some additional political elements. And then I don't know if Magda wanted to integrate, and let's start to have this round on the text that I think everyone has seen.
Thank you, Virginia. Thanks, everybody. And also not only for your presence today, but for the work that has been done over, I would say, the last couple of years now. And in particular, also thanks to Kenzie and Magda that the other day have shared additional constructive criticism as well as documents. I totally missed the decision of the Council in December, which I seen was the day before the so-called Qatar Gate started, so I got distracted by that, and I apologize for that. But I would like to start from this document that I went through. It's like a 9-page document, and I invite you to read it because it's a compilation of, I don't know if French is still the diplomatic language, of bullshit that are the result of diplomatic exercises here and there to try and put together in a single document different viewpoints for the major and final sake of doing nothing. Now, the title of the document says it all. They would like to have a human rights-centered EU drug policy recommendations, which is also something that we took as a suggestion and as a final result of the meetings that we've had in the past, to be, in fact, the core of our proposal. Now, here, I think I will switch from a recap of our past events to the present of our political, in the most noble meaning of the word, perspective. What we are trying to suggest, not to the Council, but to the Commission, is our interpretation of how a human rights-centered drug policy should be designed. For us, it is not a health problem on which the stigma of drug use should be taken away, or on a situation in which alternative sanctions should be imposed on people that use drugs. Our views will be that prison will never come into the picture for people that use drugs, regardless of the quantity, certainly, and of the complicated effects that may result in using those substances. Now, we are concentrating our proposal here only on cannabis. But our idea of having a human rights-centered drug policy means this: no penalization for non-violent offenses, no alternative penalties for people that use drugs. I understand that this, I hope not even among ourselves, but certainly when we talk to other people, meaning governments, it's a radical, so to speak, approach to the problem. But after 62 years of a situation in which civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights have been systematically violated, creating way more problems than those that were supposed to be taken care of by the 3 UN Convention and all the other national and regional regulations, I think we can take it upon ourselves to ask something that is not shared by the Council, it's not shared by the Commission. It's not shared by member states. Otherwise, there would be no reason in undertaking a political initiative, because if we were all on the same page, there would be no need to do something, right? So this, I think, is the pretext or the grounds on which we have developed our suggestion. Now, it is the reply we got from the office that Virginia mentioned before. It's something in between technical and political, because they enumerated the articles of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union that can be used. But at the same time, they also offered a political comment, which, I mean, we can take essentially into consideration, but we could care less if they believe that there's no way that any member state, let alone, of course, the European Commission, will change radically their policy on drug policy or drug laws. So this concerns the first part of the ECI. The second part is more about therapeutic or access to cannabis as a therapeutic remedies. Kenzie has expressed his views. I think that we should also try and be as cautious as possible in what we suggest, but at the same time, try and broaden our views of the problem as much as possible. The Italian experience after 17 years of law that allows the medical prescription of cannabis tells us that we don't have enough cannabis, not only because we do not produce enough cannabis, but because the system of direct import from the Netherlands it takes almost 3 months from the moment in which you have a prescription to the moment in which the product arrives in your home. So it's a long time if you have to respect your therapeutic plans. At the same time, the quantity that is bought after international tenders have been launched by the government is not enough, put together with the quantity produced in Italy and the one bought from the Netherlands, to cover a third of the legal demand recognized and authorized by the International Narcotic Control Board. A country like ours of 60 million people is allowed, according to the International Drug Control System, to import or produce up to 3 tons of cannabis, which, according to our estimate, it's nothing compared to the demand, but still would be something. At the same time, we are in a situation in which only 1/3 of these 3 tons is around the country, and the quality is not necessarily the best one. So we have to keep in mind national, sure, it's Benjamin, let me finish. I only have 2 more things to say. We have to keep in mind the national situation that can also be common to more than one country, of course, and trying to articulate with a little bit of space of maneuver that's allowed by the Treaty of Lisbon, and concentrate our ask on that matter. Now, if you go through the document, and perhaps we can put the link in the chat, that because Magda has provided it yesterday, I think there is at least one thing that we can exploit for our purpose of that document. That is, at some point, the European Council says that also civil society and non-governmental organizations should be involved in the development of drug policy. This is what we're trying to do. We would like to be involved, and they, in a different way than the forum, the civil society drug forum, whatever the name is of the group that meets monthly or whenever they meet in Brussels. This issue, like all the other issues at the center of ECIs, are not issues of and by experts. These are citizens' issues. They belong to the people. people that suffer the repercussion of legislations on their own skin, on their own bodies, on their own life, on their own freedom. So we appreciate all the expertise that we can receive, and we have been studying these things, and the result of the ECI that will have to be rewritten, not only because there may still be additional constructive criticism coming from this meeting and maybe other email exchange, and also after what the Office of the European Commission has told us. But we will have to keep in mind that we are the people, and the people have different kinds of ways of expressing their desire to have an impact on the legislation than the legislators themselves. If you read the conclusions of December, you will see they also have a problem with the English language, not only because they repeat the same thing over and over again, but because they had to write things in a way in which you don't understand where is the final point at which they want to reach a conclusion, because there are no conclusions. They invite this and that to do something. Or try and not create additional discrimination. For us, the discrimination is this. We would like to have a drug law or drug policies around human rights. The first right of human rights is that I should be able to take a decision on my body, knowing the positive and negative effects of that decision. Period. That's it.
Thank you, Marco. So we have a first reaction from Benjamin.
Hi, thank you, Marco, and thank you everyone who partook into the redaction of the proposal. I throw this a little bit because it's been bugging me a little bit since I've been reworking on the document. And what Marco was saying just at the end, saying, well, what we want is a drug policy that is centers around human rights. I think this message should be translated the way we want, but it should be the core of that proposal. And for me, the proposal right now is dual, with one side on let's let every state regulate their cannabis policies the way they wish, which I think it's smart, it's context-based. It broadens, as Marco was saying, the scope without limiting it to legalization. And at the same time, we have a specific part on medical, which I think could be integrated into the first part rather than being a dual and secondary message, which confuse, for me, the symbolic weight of this process, which is above all pretty symbolic in terms of institutional impact. And for me, it's important to have one message, and that message is clear. And so it's centered around human rights. But the idea is that will we be able to translate it in a way where we can attract people and come and sign it? Because that's the ultimate goal that I think we should not lose sight of. We'll get to technicality, and I want to, get to talk about the work that we just published with Kenzie that I think can strengthen a lot. And we've seen that with the answers from the European agency, which is, I think, technical and political. I agree, Marco. But my message was this: let's just have a step back. And I know the medical is important. I think the Italian example is a good one, but on the other side, I'm saying it is proper to the state to decide, what they want to do. And other states don't have the Italian process, and they have a better one. Some have a different one, and still a shitty one, but it's up to the state ultimately. So they have already that freedom to regulate and to put in place a system that is for patient access. They have the capacity to do research and to invest. I think the weight of having that process on medical on one side is less impactful than if it was on the solely on the other one. So that was just my take on this.
Thank you, Benjamin. So I suggest, okay, bye, Fabian.
Just a very, very tiny remark. Because I mean, you obviously can see in the document that there was, although it's not the core topic, to mention this whole medical scientific use and so on. In this context, I would like to remind of other initiatives aiming for citizen science. And I mean, although there are not that many current campaigns with a focus on drug policy, we have to keep in mind, although it's in principle possible for a lot of scientists to work with substance classified as narcotics, on a citizen science perspective, it's made very tough. Yeah, I'm a freelance toxicologist, working for a consultancy. I don't have a lab. I have to be fucking scared for every little sample I have here. Yeah, so if we want to incorporate the scientific aspect, then we also should keep in mind the current movements of citizen science. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. Michael?
Now, this is actually a wonderful question, and we are also working on another ECI on the right to science, because as you know, in 2020, the United Nations Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Committee adopted a general comment on Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights that talks about what should be done by member states to promote, protect the right to science, and certainly citizen science or popular participation of non-scientists in the scientific work is one of the obligations of member states. Now, this committee is important because they have launched last October a 2-year drafting process of another general comment that should assess the impact of drug policies on economic, social, and cultural rights. And what you're talking about is a cultural right, because science is actually considered by the UN a cultural right. So this is certainly important. I don't know, or if you have a suggestion on how this preoccupation should be, in fact, drafted in the text. If it's 2 questions or 1 single question, it's difficult to craft, but I understand, Benjamin, what you're saying, but we are trying, we can continue working on the text, but at the end of the day, we will have to find a decision that should make everybody happy, of course, but it's also grammatically palatable, because it's not only a series of questions, but it has to be a coherent text. So this is important. But the reason why we wanted to include the medical aspect, in fact, posed the problem of research and what is needed to promote research, or at least not to impede research. And I think certainly providing resources is one thing, but also lessening the strict regulations for importation and also detention of the substance, because if you want to do it in a lab, the lab has to be reorganized for security reasons, even more important than the safety of the people that work in the lab. If you don't have a lab, I'm sure it's going to be a total nightmare to try and do this kind of research. Or as a freelance toxicologist like you are, but it's something that we will not be able to include in this initiative, could also be included in another initiative, because as Virginia has said, and you're all strongly invited to try and find the time to come to Gdansk in 3 weeks. We are working on a group of initiatives. And some of the issues can be present in different initiatives, and other will be concentrated mainly on one. I'm not sure that we will be able to include all the preoccupations. It is certainly true that the moment in which we have a text and we launch a campaign, all those additional elements that could work in favor of supporting the ECI could be included in the campaign to let the Europeans know that there is such an initiative going on, and it is attached to all those additional problems that didn't make it into the final text. We can actually include them in the background documents, which is the 5-page document that we have been putting together with a lot of quotes from other UN instruments. And there is a paragraph taken from this general comment of 2020 that speaks solely on cannabis and how drug laws have imposed unnecessary obstacles to the research on the plant. Now, what kind of research that is, Kenzie, I will rely also on your judgment, but I'm not sure we can actually find a formula in which we say that the two suggestions you make of the kind of research that is allowed, but no research and development for big pharma or industrial cannabis, because once you have research, you have research, and whoever has the resources and intelligence to carry out research, I'm sure that should be allowed to do that. Then we can talk about patentability of the product of research, but that's another story. So in Italy, we have to say, we don't put the cart before the horses, or actually the oxes. So let's try to go step by step and see what can come up. But I mean, I'm not saying these things because we are not open to suggestions, of course, but we are having a discussion that should be very helpful for everybody that is involved to look at the thing at two levels, the technical level of the text, but also the political intentions and the political climate in which we are suggesting this. That at the same time, it will be overlap with the preparation of the European elections. And if we look at the color of the governments around the continent, I'm not seeing too many green in terms of cannabis green friendly governments. Also Germany, that in theory was supposed to be already now at the final stages of legalization, is encountering a lot of problems posed by European institutions and by so-called experts that are using other excuses, not motivations, reading the international obligations deriving from the ratification of the UN conventions in a very conservative, narrow way. Member states can do whatever they want at home. I can make the most tragic example. They can wage war even if war is illegal. So they can change a law even if they have ratified the UN conventions, because other countries in other parts of the world have done so already. And they're sovereign states, Canada, Uruguay, Jamaica to a certain extent, and Malta and Liechtenstein. I mean, Liechtenstein is as big as the center of Rome, so it's not a good example, but I'm a little worried that the German situation can become a huge continental problem if they don't move forward. And perhaps German civil society should take the lead on looking. Yes, we voted for you because you made a promise. You're not able to come up with a viable proposal. We are approaching the matter in a different way through the other channel that's allowed by the European Commission. That is this. Thousands and thousands of people will repeat their desire to see a different kind of drug policy being adopted or developed, and finally become the law of the next land. Anybody else?
Yeah, particularly on the text, maybe.
So those of you that had the time to go through the response from the commission, and I understand Benjamin has, and agrees with also our reading of 50-50 technical and 50 political answers, have had also the time to think about possible new ways of phrasing the ECI. Because I think the language that could be taken, in fact, from the European Council document of December, one out of the many paragraphs, I think, could be helpful. We could use it to our extent. So what we're saying is, okay, you're always mentioning evidence-based, holistic approach and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's the same old story. So we have to do something else.
Sorry, from a more strategical perspective, I just want to mention another point on the European Citizen Initiative. This one and this package attempt that we are trying to create is also that each European Citizen Initiative will contain a demand for a sortition-based citizen panel on the topic, which is something that we somehow, politically speaking, we take from the Conference on the Future of Europe process. I don't know to what extent you have followed that, but basically for the past 2 years, the European Union institutions started this mechanism of having sortition-based citizens panels there was a process, the Conference on the Future of Europe, and now they're using these a bit random on topics that they think are important. So the idea that we want to communicate with that is that if a European Citizen Initiative is successful, it should somehow have if not a change in regulation, because understandably so 1 million is not representative enough, but at least a deliberative process organized by the institution on the matter. And I think this little element that is going to be included, it can be included in this European Citizen Initiative, can also help us to have a more simple set of demands, somehow asking for further discussion and elaboration and prioritizing this topic over others in the plans of the Union. So I just wanted to mention this aspect that is less related to this policy element, but is more the mechanism that can be triggered through the European Citizen Initiative, because I think it can also help us to reduce the burden of finding the perfect details in the text and keep the spirit, which I think was a bit what Benjamin was saying, and make the spirit very clear, and the fact that this needs to be being brought to the citizens and again to the political parties that will run for the elections. I guess if we have enough impact in terms of signatures, it's more difficult to ignore the anti-prohibitionist demands in general. Going back to the chairing role, Natalie.
Hi folks, just reading back the reply or the response. And I think the way the overall thing is framed, like the European Union don't have competence in criminal matters. So like they don't have the power to tell other countries what to make criminal and what not to make a criminal activity. So I do think the best way to frame the initiative to the Commission in general would be on a human rights and public health approach. So try to make it as less legal or as less kind of criminal law related. So instead of mentioning like criminal convictions, decriminalization, imprisonment, make it more solely focused on public health and the human rights of people, because that is areas that the EU Commission do have full competence in. Again, though, we are crossing over into criminal law and legal territory. Will they be able to force countries to change? Not really. Can they make it a policy that it is encouraged? Absolutely. And I do think that is the key to it, is if we can get the EU to change their policy that this way is encouraged rather than demanded, I think you'd have a lot more success in terms of the initiative and what's permissible at an EU level.
Yeah, well, sure.
Magdalena.
So I mean,
So just very quickly at the bottom, in response to what Natalie has suggested, it's just to say that I'm not sure whether EU actually has the possibility to influence public health. I think that quite often they use the same argumentation that actually health is not in their mandate and they cannot really influence countries. So for that reason, I believe that in addition to what we really believe in, this is one of the reasons why we thought that human rights must be put in the center. But yeah, but that's a bit of a struggle how to formulate that. But I agree, Marco, that maybe we could use these conclusions, which are not really conclusions, but still that document as a trampoline in a way. And, you know, even though we don't love it, we can say we welcome the document, and based on that, and as a follow-up and appreciating and whatever, we exactly wanted to do the human rights focused or encourage the countries to initiate the human rights focused drug policy.
Fabian?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is that, you know, the European Union or the European Commission tries to ensure that every individual country is ensuring, for example, freedom, despite of people possessing or using drugs, in this case, cannabis. But, you know, I don't think that there's much leverage to ensure it. On the other hand, in the core message, I don't see much about the actual things which are not clear yet. And the question is also how to phrase it, because I think even in this group here, there might be quite different understandings on how commercial a cannabis market should be and how to best address this. And particularly on a citizen's perspective, you know, I think with a very blunt statements about commercialization, it does not appear to be a proper citizens initiative. On the other hand, if we phrase it, you know, with the terms like that, you know, it might be interpreted as a typical, decrim solution with CSCs and homegrown. And this is, of course, this is not enough for the progress we, for example, aiming for in Germany, in the Czech Republic, etc. So phrasing commercialization with a health and a social aspect incorporated, that would be, I think, the linguistic aim here, in my opinion. I'm not suggesting a solution. I'm the new guy. I'm more here to listen for now, but I think this is actually the aim.
So my suggestion is to use the second part of the meeting more on the potential timelines and practicalities, but I want to be sure that, first of all, we have everyone heard on the text, and then that maybe we define a bit of a next step in terms of the text. So please take the floor.
Maybe, sorry, before we move to the other topic, just some, I don't really have a proposal or something to add in concrete with regards to the text, but I like maybe to give some information. I don't know, can you hear me? I think it's worth sharing a bit of information about this, something that I think, even though it's hard to comprehend how, but it will impact this initiative and it will impact everybody in the future. This thing of the European Commission taking the Hungary to the Court of Justice is not related with Hungary. We have a lot of problem like that with Hungary and the Commission, where you've heard about that in other topics other than cannabis. Here, it just happens that Hungary is in the middle of this thing, but it comes from before and it will continue after. And we should not place this as one of the other Hungary versus the Commission fight. It's really something about the Commission. Since 2016 has been trying to, since the Lisbon Treaty has been adopted, there are new competencies for the Commission with regards to treaties. And so this is the first element. The second element is that there is no specific drug law in EU law. It's the fundamental drug law is the convention, are the three conventions. And the three conventions are actually a part of the EU law, a part of the corpus of European law. And this is acknowledged by the European Commission. And that's why they say anything, any change related to the drug treaties is or should be consulted with the Commission, and they are trying to grab more competencies with regard to treaty stuff in general. But in particular here, because there is no other EU laws than the drug treaties, the Commission, by grabbing the competency on the drug treaties, is taking a role that is unprecedented in the European Union, where any sovereign movement of any country that affects the convention in any way would have to be importantly consulted with the Commission. I mean, it's complex to go into detail, but it will be into the hand of the Commission and much more deeply involved into deciding on the reservability or not of the different possible changes. That was not the case before. That's why, for instance, when we heard the Commission saying about Germany, this thing, it's not very clear that the Commission can do that right now. I mean, they can, according to their interpretation of these new articles from the Treaty of Lisbon, but it's not yet been written into stone. There was already a fight of the government. The government are opposed to this interpretation of the Commission because obviously it's a bit too much. And there have been already fights around this interpretation in the past. Again, it's coming from 2016. And so this suing Hungary at the Court of Justice is a way for the Commission to have a final word from the Court of Justice saying, yes, this is competency of the Commission. So in the future, we will, and it's likely that their argumentation will hold and they will win at the court. I mean, it's very complex, obviously, and I can't say how it will go, but there are a lot of chances on the side of the Commission. And so this will not be Hungary losing, this will be the sovereignty of governments and therefore their parliamentary representation to decide upon anything related to the Drug Control Convention in the future. So that I think that's extremely important. And me myself, that I've been following that, I don't really I can grasp all of the impact that it will have, and it will be really consequential. So we should have that in mind. I know it's difficult to have in mind something that is so confused and new, but yeah, I hope it's clear. I try to make this complex topic a bit clear to explain to you right now. I hope you got the main points. So thanks for the attention.
Thank you.
And yeah, I really don't know how it can translate into this particular discussion on the document, but
sorry, Georg, but are they still in Hungary because you voted against the WHO recommendation to delete cannabis from Schedule 4 of the 61 Convention?
yes, and this is like an epiphenomenon of their interpretation of their competencies, because yeah, it's just an epiphenomenon. So obviously the Commission is probably surfing on some fashionable moment where attacking Hungary is like the things they're doing, but also it's a great opportunity for them to have the Court of Justice give the final word on this interpretation that they have been having trouble to impose upon governments in the last years, including this vote of Hungarian against. That is, it's not good that Hungary votes against, cannabis withdrawal from Schedule 4, but I think they should be free to do it if they want. You know what I mean? Obviously, I don't support the vote of Hungary, but I don't think the Commission should. I don't think they should be blocked from doing it, and that's what the Commission is doing. But that's just an epiphenomenon of the fact that the entire competencies with regard to the full treaty will be given back to the Commission and to the Union as a whole. Not everything is the Commission. Some of it is the Council and stuff, but basically it will confirm that for the moment the convention are ipso facto part of European law, and after the judgment of the court, if it's positive in favor of the Commission, it will not be ipso facto anymore. It will be from court case part of EU law, but it's already part of EU law, so we have to take that into account. And it will only increasingly be recognized in the future.
Yeah, but that's also something that we can exploit to our advantage. I mean, if there are some documents that we can study, feel free to share them, Kenzie, because I think then we can share them also with people that have more competence in the European law regulations or in how to bend interpretations of something, because legal entities are continue to be, and sovereign states continue to be central in international law. But I think quoting or unquoting it, I think there are also two ways of interpreting things. So we can try and do that to our advantage. Thank you. Sorry, Georg.
Yeah, well, no problem. Can I? Okay, sorry for the delay. I'm coming right out of a governmental hearing about the details of legalization and so on. So they are working on it still and want to do it and want to have it. But it's really a very narrow game on the edge, especially regarding European Union. So for us, this issue, this ECI is more and more important. Maybe also if we don't get it done as the next plan to come forward somehow, however, and well, I surely don't have to explain. If we get it done, it's a major breakthrough for all of us and the first domino of a fast burning fire of legalization through Europe and the world. And on the other hand, if we don't, it's the full break. So we would like to get it done and we would like to start a successful initiative. So I made two remarks to the text I think we should discuss. I don't know if today or however, before we start at least. One is the goal of the whole thing, of our proposal. Should it be to get Europe out of our way and leave the member states alone with their plans and their drug policy? Or shall it be the proposal to influence the drug policy of the single member states to the better? For us, obviously, the first thing is what is our problem now? Just to get them out of the way, and that clearly not just one law expert says it's possible, the other says it's not. It must be clearly possible to legalize cannabis. That's all we need at the moment. And I don't know if it's really realistic to want them to do more, to influence the single countries to make a better drug policy. Maybe it's more. We may have more success with a lower proposal of just don't interfere anymore. But the second thing is, how can we get all those signatures? And what is the motivation of the population of our several countries with very different grounds we are coming from? For the Germans, it's the perfect motivation just to get Europe out of the way. For other countries where no movement is already visible, it's very attractive to sign a petition that says, well, we don't get it done, please, the European Union, bring us the better. There are two very different approaches, I think, where we have to get clear on. And my second point is, can't we get it somehow simpler, the whole text? It's very complicated as I see it now, very long sentences, very lawful. I mean, the core proposal must make sense somehow with the law and the right wording. But do we need all those background informations about this document and that document and so on? I mean, 1 million people shall see that, understand that, sign it, and that fast and easy and simple. And many people probably first want to read what they sign. And if they sit there 10 minutes, 15 minutes, reading this again, and don't understand anything, well, that would be a major problem for collecting signatures.
Thank you, Georg. Before giving the floor to Marco and Sofia, I just want to highlight that the text of the ECI is basically just the first 6 lines, is the objectives part. Everything below that is annex documents for their elaboration. So what we really need to draft to launch the ECI technically is only the first 500, that's not even words, the first paragraph. So that is what we need to register the ECI, to collect the signatures. And that is what it's visible on the platform of the Commission when we collect the signatures. So I think the policy document, briefing documents, etc., is part of our elaboration, whether we talk with experts or not, for debate, etc. But the text is that part. I just want to highlight this element, which can also help us to simplify and overcome some of the points that we were discussing today. Marco and Sophia, and then maybe we try to define
I think
next
someone
steps.
else was raising their hand, but perhaps they took it down. So no, Georg, I totally agree with you that, what Virginia was saying now, that the best thing would be read 2 lines and sign and move on to the next signatory, which is something that happened, of course, in our referendum in Italy 2 years ago. But we want to demonstrate not only that we have done our homework, but we are compiling a set of official documents that in a way corroborate our idea. That is, if you are speaking about a human rights-centered drug policy, this means at least 2 things. One, that there is no prison for people that decide to use personally illicit substances, in this case, cannabis. This, I think, it's a rule all over the world. Even if you talk to the staunchest prohibitionist, and I've done it during the referendum campaign, my final question was, but wouldn't you agree with me that not putting people in prison would be at least a better way of governing the phenomenon? And they would say, oh, yes, of course. Then they want to send it to a rehabilitation or detoxification facilities, and I would leave them at home. But again, the agreement is that no prison is the law of the land. So European Commission should, on the basis of the international documents, recommendations, treaties, and whatever we have put in the text. And at the end of the day, that there is the decision of the European Council of December 2022, so very recent, we all should be in agreement that criminal sanctions for personal use and growing and exchange for non-economic reason, and so that we may trim down the conducts that are in the first part of the ECI, because also the commercialization, it's an issue that we cannot address at this stage. For us, is what a human rights-centered drug policy is all about. So not sending people to prison. This is one thing. Then I understand your argument that says some country would like to have Europe take over because they are a very horrible situation at home, and like someone like yours and ours, because also some European documents were used by the Italian Constitutional Court to block the referendum. I would say, you know what, go to hell. But Kenzie was making a very complex argument before, saying that this is it's still disputable if it's their competence or not to infringe in national decisions or political decisions, and certainly in national laws. But once again, if we're talking about human rights are not the right to health. As when we talk about drugs, it's also the right to ingest or inhale something that's, in the case of cannabis, is way less dangerous than a lot of other things that we ingest and that are produced thanks to the common agricultural policy, like wine, for instance. And so this is why I think now that you were speaking and also people were commenting in the chat, perhaps a possible first, second, or nth version of the ECI would be to take away some of the verbs that we want to decriminalize, explaining that for us, not foreseeing prison as the place where you go if you decide to ingest or inhale something. It's an explanation rather than an interpretation of what human rights are all about. So human rights are about the non-discrimination. This is the golden rule. And the second is that informed decisions that may also go against your personal health should be taken. Some constitutions around the world also allow the suspension of life support if people so decide. But they should know that if they suspend this life support treatment for excessive suffering, let's say, They encountered that.
What has that all got to do with the European Union? They don't force any member state to criminalize people and send them to jail, so that's no real problem. Then we are at my first question. So you want the European Union to force the member states not to send somebody to prison, or what?
No, not to. No, you cannot force, because if you read the document, also the European Council invites. So we as civil society, we can only invite, but the invitation would be to share the notion that criminalizing a non-violent action, something that doesn't do any harm to anybody else, not even to yourself, is something that should be enshrined in the general policies of the European Commission. So you cannot impose, and this is why, I mean, from the viewpoints of Germany now, they cannot impose you anything, right? So if they believe that the 3 UN conventions are the law of the land.
But they do. So what you say and what Kenzie says and 1,000 other lawyers is not important as long as they stop us doing this, you know?
No, I don't know how much the government is convinced, because the other issue would be take a decision and then we see. Sue me, now, as they say in America. So I'm going my way because my electorates voted in favor of this coalition because one of the common points was to legalize cannabis. I legalize it, then you sue me, and then we see it.
That's not what's going to happen. If the European Commission says no, they won't do it, and that's it. And that's what we want to avoid.
We can, no, but you, okay. If you want to, what do you want to avoid? The thing is, what is the final outcome? The final outcome would be you would legalize like Canada, and nobody bothered them, not even the United States that are at the border. So you have way more bordering countries than the Canada. But I would, if I were Scholz, let's put it that way, I would go my way, which is not my way, but it's a lot of people way. And then you sue me. Yeah, and talk to von der Leyen, who's from another party, but still they understand the same language. You say, okay, you know what? You sue me, and then we laugh in court. So,
sure, but they won't do that. They won't stop the whole issue if the Commission says no. That's it.
It's a matter of leadership and courage. What can I say?
Yeah, but I think the question here is now if we then should push this ECI to actually address this point, and then therefore, you know, particularly address these aspects. I mean, feel free to delete this again, but I, for example, I suggested one alternative phrase, which actually implies proper regulation of commodities, something which is completely new to Europe. There is no country in Europe where cannabis for recreational market is a commodity currently, unless in the US or Uruguay or Canada.
Sofia, Viviane, and then Magda.
Hi everyone, it's the first time for me here, so Sofia, by the way, nice to meet you all. I work with Virginia, with Eumans. Just a really quick remark. I completely agree with, I think Natalie said before, so taking the human rights approach and the health approach to get some legal basis for the ECI. But apart from that, I think we need to say really clear here that even if we get 1 million signatures, the ECI works as a normal law after that. So the Commission can propose it, but there's always the Council there. And the Council does the veto block, of course. So I think it's pretty ironic here saying what the Commission can do, what the Commission is breaching, sovereignty, whatever. I think the main focus of the Council is completely blocking the law process. So sovereignty is completely, I mean, there with the Council, with the Parliament too. So saying the Commission should be out, we have to take the Commission out, or the Commission right now is our main ally. So I think we should focus more on the Council. What the Council would be doing with that, even if it passes, even if we get 1 million signature, even if the Commission supports this initiative, what the Council would do after the Commission assessment. Saying that we need to take the European Commission out of the way, I think is completely like out of any strategic plan right now. And I mean, why are we discussing an ECI, I would think, in the like framework? Thanks.
Thank you, Magda. Can I take a second? Let's try to clarify among ourselves. When we say the health aspect of drug consumption is not me speaking smoking a joint. It's the development of a problematic relationship with the substance that some people call addiction. Because otherwise, in Europe, there will be 50 million people with a health problem, and they're not having a health problem, luckily. So the second part, if we want to keep it of the ECI, speaks about access to meds, let's put it that way. But if we use drugs, we don't have a health problem. We have a habit. Then you can judge what kind of habit that is, but it's certainly not related to your personal health, because otherwise what we will have to say about drinking wine or beer or whiskey. So that is can be, again, be a habit, culturally very well rooted and developed, but in some instances it can become a health problem. But framing cannabis related issues within the right to health, I think it's not what needs to be done at this stage in 2023, because luckily it is not. It's a cultural/social habit.
Magda?
Just a quick remark, Marco, to what you said previously about prisons. In a very similar direction, maybe to the one that you described right now, I would also be very careful describing criminalization as putting or sending people to prisons. Because again, even if the countries where we do criminalize drugs possession, and we use that extensively, like in Poland, we don't necessarily send people to prisons. It doesn't mean they don't have many other different problems because of the decision of the court that says guilty, but it's not necessarily sending people to prison. So if we overuse that argument, that in many cases we'll hear, well, yeah, but we do not send people to prison. So I would be quite careful about that aspect. So just to add that.
But how would you phrase the civil society interpretation of what a human rights-centered policy should be about? Because
I would
I
focus
was
on more.
exaggerating. I mean, I was using the argument that I was using doing tablings or on TV when I had to confront a priest, because it's unfortunately you always had to confront a priest when you talk about drugs in Italy, and perhaps in Poland is the same issues. But entering the criminal circuit is also technically what we are saying. So opening a file, or stopping someone, or initiating a criminal proceedings, this is something, there you go. So we are Brendan is speaking about the Irish example. So I think entering the criminal circuit is also something that it's contrary to human rights in a way, because all constitutions also have what the European Council is highlighting, which is proportionality of penalties. So,
but how about, maybe this is really my focus because of Poland and what we are observing here, but for me the problem starts before the person is sent to prison, or even the court decides he or she is guilty. The problem for me starts with the police officers having a super easy tool to target people and to stop them. So for me, here is the problem. I mean, of course, the whole rest, yes, but how about, like, you know, focusing on this part? And then we can think and propose how to formulate that so it is also easily digestible for people. But I just think that it's not only about prisons, it's far, far more.
Sanctioning in any possible way, because sometimes administrative sanctions are way stronger than criminal sanctions, because you have a minimum that doesn't take you to jail, but then you have your driving license suspended, your passport suspended, you cannot drive your car for months, and blah blah blah. Okay, well, it's good that we're recording the meeting, because we will have to go through over and over again to try and find a final language.
Okay,
No,
Derek.
Yeah, just to underscore the point of Marco that indeed administrative law can be much worse than penal law is exactly what happens in the Netherlands, where they even admit that a few years ago they were so frustrated that with the penal law it was very hard to go after cannabis users and home growers. So they just said, well, we just use administrative law. Then the mayor, they make this decision with the administrative law. You don't even have to see a judge, and they can put you out of your house even for a few plants. And so in the text, maybe if you would just even add that word, no criminal or administrative sanctions for personal use or possession for personal use. And maybe also a way of phrasing it could be, if we take the idea that we are discriminated against, when first you say, you know, the ranking by the Lancet, for instance, and by the Dutch Institute for Environment, it's clear that alcohol has more negative effects. So we are discriminated against compared to people who have alcohol as drug of choice. But that it's going maybe to a different road. But in a way, that's maybe what we're fighting for, you know, even if we have problematic alcohol use, we are not imposed any strange criminal or administrative sanctions. And that's what we want. We want to be treated like alcohol users, basically.
Yeah. Well, also alternative penalties may also be problematic, because in Italy, introducing alternative sanctions, then you ended up having 3 times as many people under custody at home, or with the duty to sign at the police station every morning, rather than just spending 2 nights in jail. Now, it's a complicated issue, and if we were simpler, we wouldn't have this problem. So I think the drafting exercise will still be open. May I suggest, Virginia, that rather than sending the 7-page, we take, let's say, 24 hours to rewrite the 5 lines, let's say, and then we share it to the group, and everybody should take the weekend at least to try and think about possible compromise solutions, and then we either reconvene or we continue this dialogue online. Not only because we have another meeting coming up very soon today, but because I think concentrating on words may actually prove more effective after having had this live and alive exchange of ideas. So that if there are, it's always not nice to call on names, but if the other people that have been following would like to share not only their views, but also their national political constraints or concerns, so that we can have a broader views that goes beyond Italy, Ireland, the Netherlands, Poland, and Germany, that have, and France. I don't know, Kenzie, for which is your major, or Spain, country of
well, in terms of, just shortly, but France and Spain, just for this social movement right now.
Kenzie.
They are both concerned by the CBD issue and the repression to that the real issue here more than.
Sorry, it's impossible to hear you. There is background noise and other sounds. I don't know if you can change the mic or. Okay, sorry, yeah, but it was really impossible.
So he'll write something.
Okay. Oh, but then it's I was asking him if he's more concentrated on the French or on the Spanish problems, and so yes. Unfortunately, the repression on CBD is going to start soon in Italy as well, after we have had the changing government, and we were demonstrating in front of the health ministry the other day with 5 or 6 patients organizations, because there are unfortunate maneuvers coming. Okay, yes. So the second part of the meeting is only 15 minutes, but it was about how to strengthen the network to try and launch the campaign, if I may.
Yeah, exactly. If just to go back to the previous point, I think it's a great idea to work only on the short text in this phase, because that is what is needed to launch in reasonable times and to activate the registration procedure. So we will do as Marco suggested. So I will follow up to this meeting with clean text only with that amount of lines. So and I think the other part would be if maybe we can already say, for example, same time next week, same day for a follow-up meeting. But I think having already a next step meeting would be helpful. In terms of timeline, the reason of this acceleration, I think, was also described in the specific member state situations, but also the overall European context. I think to align this process with the other European citizen initiatives mechanism would be a smart move. For that process, the key timelines would be 17th of March, so in Gdansk, during the Gdansk event, to reach a sort of a final version of these ECIs, other ECIs, etc., to then activate the registration procedure, which we know takes more or less 2 months. So imagining that the Commission doesn't stop the message, let's say that by the end of March, we register the text, and then it means that end of May could potentially be possible to start and collect the signatures. One idea that we have is that on the 9th of May, which is Europe Day, we could present together this set of European citizen initiatives, which potentially will give some visibility to the machine. So these are some timelines that we don't need obligatory to follow, but I do believe that a broader context can significantly help. So basically, the idea is, do we think we are able to finalize the ECI text? So really just the paragraph, not everything. I mean, everything else is additional before the 19th of March to do a final round of discussions, potentially with others, and maybe to have a version that we can start to share with additional partners, something as this work is done with a minimal amendments, but so that's our effort to simplify in this phase, but maybe to use then the month of March to basically onboard additional stakeholders and partners that agree in be ready to launch the ECI. I think these are the 2 essential steps: a revision of the simple objectives of the ECI and an incremental round of potential partners to increase the critical mass as soon as possible. So what do you think about these timelines? What are your activities maybe around April and May? If you're planning big events or attending big events that we already know could be a mobilizing opportunity, but I think we can use these last 12 minutes for some evaluations and then potentially agree to meet again next week at the same time. I think it would be a good idea, probably.
I guess that, as we say, we want to see the camel before selling it. So we need to have a consolidated ECI text, and then we can talk about the next step, knowing that all those that can make the trip to Gdansk are welcome, which will also provide us the opportunity to meet in person and take an hour of our precious time, and perhaps there and then, if we haven't arrived at the final version of the ECI, to adopt it there. I hope that now, rereading the text, I already had a couple of ideas. So tomorrow, because today we have too many meetings coming up, we will offer my suggestions that will take stock of what has been discussed today. But we shouldn't be ideologically attached to a great idea, because apparently we had it, but then we were unable to write it down in acceptable ways. But it's true, what I was trying to say before to Georg, we are civil society, we are the people. So even if it is good to have all the knowledge and information that is coming from government, and some of us would rather have a more diplomatic approach to things of life, if we want to adopt also, pardon my French, a fuck you approach to the institutions, so be it. I mean, otherwise, what is the reason of having a voice? I mean, we have been criticizing drug policies for over 30 years in Italy, sometimes with big impact, like in '93, some other times with less institutional impact, but more cultural and social impact. And so we should continue doing our job as everyday citizens. Sometimes these citizens make mistakes, but if they don't start or find a way to continue doing mistakes, nobody else will do them on their behalf. So yeah, no, yes, sure. I prefer the fuck you approach, but if you want, we can have a more diplomatic fuck you approach that makes everybody happy.
With Marco and Georg in disagreement, I feel like when parents are in disagreement. So please find a solution. No, but let's do this review and try to take everything into account. I will send an invite for next Wednesday, but maybe let's aim to have all the revisions before the end of the weekend, so then there is some time to review. And maybe already, if you know that, I would say, if you know someone that should be involved in this phase of the conversation, I think it's a good idea to invite them to the next meeting, or maybe to start to share the work done so far on the text, in my opinion. If someone that you think, if they are not on board, this is gonna fail, let's maybe have this conversation before, rather than having not allies when we are out there potentially with the initiative. So I think this is the window of concern, as we are proving with what all these meetings we are doing. So, okay. Fuck you with consent. Okay, we are degenerating in the chat.
Yeah,
so I think we can close the meeting.
Sorry, I should have said in your face kind of, but that's okay. I mean, we are among friends, so.
So Virginia, before we close, just a technical thing. I'm not sure whether recording saves the chat as well, but I think there has been some quite interesting input and links, etc. So maybe before you end up the meeting, there's a way to copy that as well.
Yes, I did a chat save. Inshallah. Okay, I will keep the meeting open until I don't save the chat, and then we'll send it along as well. So. Okay, archiving like the CIA, perfect.
There's also good software to transcribe the audio file.
Oh yeah, you have it?
I just had a tip from somebody who said this would be the definitive tool. Just a sec. That works really well and is also free.
Okay, that would be a life changer.
Yes.
Yeah, because then you can also look through it, you know, with the keywords.
Wow.
Yeah.
I will put it here in the chat if I find it, so that you don't have to wait.
Okay, thank
but
you.
That kind of thing is getting better, so that's indeed a time saver. But you still, you have to comprime it for use, because you get 30 pages before you know it, of course.
Because I think the Chamber of Deputies in Italy has it, but it's the one that they have also corrects the misspelling and the mispronunciation and the grammar mistakes made by members of parliament. So it's wonderful. Everybody comes out in the proceedings as if they were Dante Alighieri in person. So, but yeah, it may cost a fortune. Now, one final joke is that when in Bologna, a guy a 19-year-old guy suggested we promote Esperanto as the language of the future, you know, when it comes to European activities. So Magda, I don't know if there is a Zamenhof society somewhere in Poland that we can involve, at least in Gdansk, and have this experiment put alive, so that they can translate also with interpretation everything in Esperanto, and then we see how it goes. Is there? Because Zamenhof, the inventor of Esperanto, was a Polish Jew that 150 years ago decided to come up with this idea of a universal language that would allow everybody not to understand anything if they don't study the language, of course. But it's a very simple one.
And I could show like wall painting, like a mural, with him here in Warsaw, but I've got no idea whether anyone works with the language. We can check.
But there should be a foundation or an institute. I mean, I studied it 35 years ago, and I still remember the Italian sounding words that are very nice. But just to make an example, bird is said birdo. So, and thank you is dankon. Yes is yes, but written with a J instead of a Y. So, and on and on and on.
And
so,
the chat is saved.
Okay,
How do you say it in Esperanto?
I was saying this, it will take some time. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so materials will be sent with as soon as all the electronic things are processed. So the recording, the materials, etc. So you will have everything in your email between tonight and tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.